Welcome to today's show. So we're going to jump in. Stocks pulled back. AI names got hit. Crypto sold off. Internet does what it does. People start to panic a little bit. There's a sell-off, but also let's not forget we just had a big run-up with the Fed news, and it's natural for people to start taking profits and selling off. So today's show, we're going to talk about what's going to happen in 2026. What's the outlook? We have a new Fed chair coming in. Also going to talk about what recently happened with the sell-off and why that happened and what that means for the next coming weeks. And I'm going to jump in a little bit here and talk about the Friday news that happened that kind of exacerbated the sell-off a little bit, okay? So basically, and I'm going to talk about BMNR and see the moves in BMNR, and I'm also going to talk about MSTR and what's happening with MSTR and kind of the clash between MSTR and traditional finance. So all of that to come in today's show. Hope you guys are doing well. None of this is tax advice, financial advice, or legal advice. Do your own research. All right, so let's jump in. All right. So Friday morning, NASDAQ drops over 1%. S&P 500 drops around 1%. News came in on Friday morning. There was a little bit of panic coming in. The markets had just run fast after the Fed, cutting interest rates, and the prediction was 90% that they were going to cut interest rates. So all of it was priced in. The markets run up really high, and then people sell off. But the trigger on Friday came from, first, you had a report that came from Oracle that they might be pushing back parts of their AI data centers. And so that news came in, and Oracle dropped hard. Oracle dropped like 6.5% in the beginning of the day. And then somebody comes in and sets the news straight from Oracle and says, this is not true. This is what's really going on. You can hear the sirens going in the background saying, not true, not true, not true. And Oracle comes in and goes, not true. And then so the markets bounce back and they rebound a little bit in that sector. But like you had stocks like NVIDIA took a hit. You had other AI names took a hit as well. And not because earnings changed, not because demand disappeared for it, but sentiment flips. And we know when there's bad news, sentiment starts to flip. And that's kind of how the markets move. So let's talk about why crypto dropped next, right? So basically, crypto didn't sell off because Bitcoin broke. Crypto sold off because basically we had the Fed announce that interest rate cuts were going to happen. The stocks ran up. So if you were watching it during the announcement, you saw crypto run up. BMNR, which is a stock I'm in, MSTR, but you watch BMNR run way the heck up. We saw BMNR go up to as high as about 42. And let's not forget that BMNR was sitting at 25 only 3 weeks ago. Now, we've seen BMNR in this range before. I've been invested in BMNR for the last 5 months approximately. Back in August and September, we saw drops with BMNR all the way down to about 39 was the lowest. Now we're seeing it break through 40 again and get into the 40 range, which is a big psychological level. But it's not unlikely to think that BMNR will rebound again up to where it went back in August, September. It went all the way from 40s all the way up to 65 pretty fast. Now, I'm not saying that's going to happen. I'm not saying it's going to happen anytime soon, but at some point, this stock will rebound, and maybe that will happen at some point in 2026, okay? So crypto ran up, BMNR ran up, a lot of leverage built up, and what happened? People took profits. You could telegraph the thing. I was on the phone with one of the guys in my trading community, and I said, hey, there's a run up. I'm selling off. I sold off when BMNR was up high. I took some profits. There's an interesting thing where you can look at here. We do trading in our community. If you want to get my book, you can snag it here. It's called Money Game. And so it's a free book. I wrote it all about BMNR, all about MSTR. I've been in MSTR since early 2024. Bought in MSTR when it was at $79. Learning how to pick winners before they actually become the winners that they are. I saw it with MSTR. I saw it with BMNR as well. I think BMNR is going to be a big winner. So if you want to learn how I'm trading daily, you can go snag that. There's a video down below with the book as well. But these big run-ups, they're super predictable what's going to happen afterwards most of the time. And even in our community, we're posting here. It's such an easy way when you look at this stuff. Let me share my screen with you here. Just like you know, if you're in a community and you're learning this stuff, like I put in so predictable here, right? Reverts back to the average. Like I told a guy in my community, I'm like, hey, BMNR just ran back. It typically always reverts back to its average. It was up at 42. Right when it was 41 and a half or whatever, I sold out a huge chunk of BMNR. And what did it do? It plummeted all the way back down. And then what I say here is, that's the lesson in trading. Most of the time, not all the time, if I wait it out, I can cover any bad trades while still picking up good trades and wins. So you could have placed the worst trade ever, like before the market ran up with the announce of the interest rate cuts and the front running of that. And you watch it run all the way up and you're like, oh my God, BMNR is up 20%. Like if I had sold out or something or placed a bad trade. And that's what people don't understand in trading. You place a bad trade, it typically reverts back to the average. So even if you get yourself into trouble, you can get out. And then these moves where when it runs up like that 20%, we saw it happen on this interest rate cut. We saw it happen on the previous interest rate cut. It runs up and people are going to sell out and take profits. It is just so predictable and it becomes easy money to pick up. So, one of the things I've always talked about on the show is when the markets have dropped, if you've been following me for a while, like I hate sitting there when you see the markets drop. I own a stock, let's say BMNR, and I bought in when BMNR was high. I bought in 5 months ago. And so one of the things that I've done with BMNR is I've traded it all the way down. So as it was dropping, I sell it off, I buy it back, sell it off, buy it back, sell it off, buy it back. So I lower my average price on it. And sitting there while the markets are just doing nothing, or the markets are in limbo, to not be able to trade and pick up more shares to me is like just being total effect of the markets. Like, oh my God, this happened. Okay, great. So it happened, right? Nobody's happy about it. Nobody's happy about the fact that MSTR dropped by 60%. I'm not happy about by the fact that BMNR dropped, but when BMNR drops, because I trade it all the time, I pick up more shares. And that's the game plan. So I hold these stocks long-term in terms of MSTR. I'm holding Bitcoin long-term. But when the market's dropping, I want to pick up more shares. So if you want to learn how to do that, you can grab my book down below. You can grab a free video that shows you how we're trading in this community, and you can learn more about that. But that's what happened on Friday, and it was so damn predictable. I mean, it's so predictable. Like we just ran up 20% with BMNR. Of course, there's going to be some type of sell-off. 90-something% of the time that happens. All right. So, so there's that, right? So BMNR dropped what on Friday? It dropped 10%, but it ran up to 42. So on Friday it dropped some more, but it ran up to 42 prior, and then it dropped all the way down to 34 and change. So that's a bigger drop, right? So it wasn't a collapse. It was profit taking, leverage clearing. Any negative feedbacks you have on social media from the news I just told you. But look at BMNR's history. It's been in the 40 range before. I think we're going to go higher in 2026. Again, I don't like to make price predictions because it just sets people up for disappointment. But ultimately, it's a solid stock. And if you look at the fundamentals of BMNR, this is a company, if you've never studied them before, they own Ethereum on their balance sheet. They're basically following the MSTR playbook. It's why I got into MSTR back in early 2024. And the playbook is simple: is accumulate as much Ethereum as possible. They own over 3% of the supply. They're going to get to 5% of the supply probably sometime early in 2026, first quarter of 2026. At some point, I think BMNR will get to 10% of the ETH supply. And, if you look at Tom Lee, he's the spokesperson. He's all over the media right now. One of my friends just texted me, who works for Grant Cardone. He's at Grant Cardone's conference right now, speaking at his wealth conference. He's all over. His voice is all over. He's all over Wall Street. And you have more and more institutional players that are pouring into BMNR right now and buying them because, Wall Street is moving onto the blockchain. It's no secret. And they've been moving onto the blockchain for a while now. Major players moving onto Ethereum. The stablecoin marketplace is rising. It keeps rising. And it's getting bigger and bigger and bigger. And so this is a new game. It's an institutional game now. These are waters we have not been involved in ever before. We're in a cycle right now. Like normally we're in a 4-year cycle, and the 4-year cycle is gone completely. So we're in new territory, new waters. Nobody really knows what to expect. But if you look at the fundamentals of these companies like the blockchain will be here in the future. Ethereum, Solana, companies like this that you're going to have institutions building on these blockchains, faster settlement, the ability to move money faster. You don't have to wait 2 days for a stock to settle. It settles instantly. Higher security, better technology. This is the future of finance. And so Wall Street's in the game right now, and you kind of have a clash of the old system where you have got Bitcoin and the retail investors. We're all in the game for the last 7-8 years. I've been in Bitcoin for 8 years now. And then you've got the new financial guard coming in of Wall Street, and there's this kind of new cycle that's developing, and Wall Street's getting in the game. And so they're going to be adopting more and more in terms of crypto, in terms of buying Bitcoin, moving on to the blockchain. And so we know that the future of the blockchain is set. It's here. It's not going away because Wall Street's building on it. So that to me indicates that BMNR is going to be a freaking boomer long term because they own Ethereum. Ethereum's not going away. And this is just a play to wait out. And for me personally, I'm holding BMNR, and this is going to be a rocket ride over the next 3, 4, 5 years. Okay. So that's super exciting. The fundamentals have not changed. Now there's a lot of things going on with manipulation, price suppression, things of that nature, but fundamentals of BMNR have not changed. Fundamentals of strategy have not changed either. If you look at strategy, it's a stock I've been talking about for the last 2 years now, almost 2 years. And the fundamentals have not changed. This company continues to acquire Bitcoin on their balance sheet. They have the strongest asset in the world, in my opinion, Bitcoin, and it's in their treasury, and they own 3% of the supply as well. So all these instruments that they're issuing into the marketplace, such as Stretch and Stride and Strife and Strike, they are backed by one of the most pristine assets on planet Earth right now. And so if you're Wall Street and you're kind of watching this game right now and you're like, I'm late to the game. And the reality is strategy was first to the game in 2020 in terms of large institutions. BlackRock came in, but if you look at the rest of the Wall Street, they're late to the game. All right. So now if you see a little clash going online, and you've seen this over the last couple months, you got larger institutions that are coming after strategy a little bit. They're going to say things online. They're going to do things online. They're going to do things to the company. They're going to restrict rules like they have been. And you're going to see changes, and you're going to see big moves when the market goes down with Bitcoin. Strategy is going to dump hard. That's just a general rule of thumb. If Ethereum drops, BMNR is going to dump harder. And that's what you get with these companies. Like, you get the rocket ride when Ethereum's running, you get the rocket ride of BMNR. When Ethereum's dumping, you get the destruction of BMNR where it crashes. And same thing with strategy. We saw strategy go up all the way up to 500 plus after hours back in November last year, 2024. And look at the rocket ride down and the crash of it all the way down to 180. Okay. So this is to be expected with the volatility of these types of assets because they're a treasury place. They're digital asset treasury companies. And so you just got to be mindful of it. Also in 2024, let's not forget, before the stock split with strategy, we had a run up with the stock where it went up to 2,000. And this is while strategy was hot and booming and zooming, and it jumped all the way down to 1,000. So there's a 50% drop back in 2024. All right. So in my personal opinion, we're going to have to see some type of big run and confidence back into Bitcoin in 2026 for strategy really to have a major leg up. All right. The confidence has been dropped in it. People's confidence and sentiment has gone down with the stock. Of course, if you take a 60% hit, your confidence is going to go down a little bit. But the fundamentals have not changed. And this company, strategy, will be a force in the world. I mean, what other organization owns 3% of supply? You've got BlackRock and you've got strategy. So they're dominating the Bitcoin marketplace. And this new product Stretch that strategy has that I've been talking about for a while here. I mean, this is an incredible product. It's an opportunity for people who want to retire in their 60s, in their 70s, to start putting potentially some money into this, because you're not going to retire off 5%. Those days are over. You can't take $2 million of assets or $5 million of assets and put it into a 5% CD or 5% money market or 5% bond that's going to pay you $250,000 a year, when the cost of living has gone up so much today that you have to be earning 14% just to get ahead. That's the game we're in. So all this talk about the S&P 500, and you'll hear it, the S&P 500 has gone up 20%, 3 years ago, 20% last year, 20% this year. It's like this big thing of the S&P's running, the S&P's running. When you look at the hurdle rate to survive, it's 12, 13, 14%. So these returns of the S&P doing 20%, while they sound good and they're great, let's not forget what we lived through in COVID in 2020 and 2021 that literally printed 40% of all the money that's ever been in existence in supply. It destroyed your purchasing power, destroyed it. So these 20% gains, like the talk in the media is like excited about the S&P. Yeah, we'd rather have 20% run-ups in the S&P than having 10 or 12% run-ups. But at the end of the day, 20% is not really 20%. You got to take 20%, you got to minus out taxes, you got to minus out inflation, you got to minus out asset inflation, which is the cost of housing going up, which is the cost of the assets that you want, like the stock market going up. If you haven't been in the stock market over the last several years and now you want to go buy into the stock market, the cost is up. It's more expensive. Asset inflation. All right. And the majority of the world is not in the stock market. There's a huge percent of the world in the United States who's not in the stock market. So those people, the disparity between the people who are getting wealthy and the people who are getting poor is getting bigger and bigger and bigger because of this problem and this crisis we have. And we're in debt. U.S. is in debt. I mean, every 10 weeks, we have another $1 trillion of debt added. All right. So long term, as you look at what's going on in this TCC, it's so good to see you, man. Always good to see you, buddy. So when you really take a look at what's happening in the marketplace, like long term, like BMNR for me is a winner. MSTR is a freaking winner. Bitcoin's a winner because the other options over the long term is the S&P 500 for most consumers. And, I still believe that Bitcoin is going to do 30% a year over the next 5 years, 10 years, 15 years, 20 years. And it's why a company like Strategy can exist and why they can pay out 10% on their products. Okay. And so when you look at traditional finance, people are retiring, you're getting 5 or 6%. And when you look at Strategy, when people can get into stretch at retirement and get 10%, now you have millions and millions and millions of people all around the world who have an opportunity to retire with products like this because they can pay out 10% because they're backed by an asset that's scarce versus being backed by assets and markets and Wall Street that literally is creating products out of thin air. And that's how they do it. And if you bring this into the Bitcoin marketplace right now, many of the companies out there, you got and I'll give you a list of them in a moment, but you have companies in Wall Street right now that they are there, and they do this all the time. They've done this with gold. They've done this with oil. They're creating products that aren't backed by Bitcoin. They are. JP Morgan has Bitcoin linked notes, right? That basically says you give us your money and then we're going to give you returns based on how Bitcoin's doing, but they're not, in some of these cases, they're not owning the underlying Bitcoin. And that's the difference between Strategy. That's also the difference between BlackRock. They own the underlying Bitcoin. They have Bitcoin underlying these assets that they're issuing. So when you have Strategy issuing Strike and Strife and Stride, Bitcoin is backed. It's backed by Bitcoin. And that's a huge, significant difference. You see Wall Street coming out with all these products, futures products, derivatives products, these Bitcoin-backed notes that they're coming out with, not backed by Bitcoin. Not backed by Bitcoin. All right. And this is not a new thing, right? Go back into 1971 when we got off the gold standard. We got off the gold standard in 1971, right? With the whole Nixon thing. And then Wall Street sprung up because of this. And they started creating things where the dollar wasn't backed by gold. So they started creating products, derivatives, other forms. And they created the synthetic dollar. And they created all kinds of products that sprung up as a result of this. All kinds of products. And so the beautiful thing about like new finance, digital finance with companies like Strategy that actually own the Bitcoin is that they own a real asset. And Wall Street's just doing its thing, and it's not going to stop doing its thing. And it's going to create all kinds of derivatives and all kinds of future products and all these things. But in many cases, is not backed by Bitcoin. So at some point, you can't suppress and keep the Bitcoin price down forever. At some point, you're going to have real scarcity with Bitcoin, and you're going to have some move in the price of Bitcoin. You can't hold it down forever. There's this kind of war that's going on of a little bit of like traditional finance with the new world of digital finance, and it's finding its place, and there's this evolution taking place. And ultimately, there will be a place for both. But companies like Strategy that own the real thing, companies like BMNR that own the real thing with Ethereum, these will be companies that thrive into the future, okay? And of course, Bitcoin, Ethereum, these are assets that will thrive in the future. So that's exciting and super exciting. And somebody's asking, when will Bitcoin and Ethereum run? I don't think anybody knows the answer to that right now. I think the outlook for 2026, people are thinking is good. But of course, we can say that, and it's the only thing we can say. is because we know 2025 was a bust. Let's call it what it is. It was a total bust. Nobody expected to it. And the reason it was a bust is it's an institutional marketplace right now. That whole 4-year cycle is completely dead. It's institutions. Institutions are running the game right now. Capital is being poured into institutions. The number of institutions buying BMNR right now, it's going up and up. The number of institutions that own MSTR, 50% of MSTR is owned by institutions. So you're looking at an entirely different game. 2026, let's see what happens. We have a new Fed chair coming in 2026. Powell's going to be out. If you watch Tom Lee, he was talking on the news the other day. He was talking about like the Fed is kind of a put for the marketplace right now, meaning like if the marketplace goes down and drops, the Fed steps in to kind of reboost the marketplace. We're seeing this with the lowering of interest rates. We're seeing this with quantitative tightening that ended on December 1st. They're not calling it quantitative tightening, but let's face it, like when quantitative tightening ends, it means quantitative easing. But we're not seeing the moves in the marketplace like we have seen in the past. You remember back in the day when we see Fed interest rate cuts and Bitcoin would just shoot up massively. To see Bitcoin go from 90 to 95,000 is not a massive shoot up. These are not things that we used to see with Bitcoin when things like this happen. Anybody who lived through it in 2020 and 2021, it was a different game. But yet, we are preparing for things. If you watch my previous video when I talked about the ISM, which basically means our business is building shit again, right? That's what the ISM is. It's below 50. It's going to go up above 50. Anytime it crosses above 50, the markets typically rally. It's good for Bitcoin. That's one of the things when you look at FundStrat and they've come out with their new analysis, they're basically saying, based on the ISM, this is kind of the correlation between Bitcoin going up and having its runs, and other correlations have dropped and kind of fallen out of the game. All right. So we will see as businesses start building stuff again, as the ISM goes above 50, potentially we could have a run in Bitcoin. So we should watch for this because that's a cycle that's still intact, the movement of the ISM with the Bitcoin moving up as well. So let's watch for that. Tom Lee and FundStrat give good predictions on that. But again, nobody's right all the time. They were not right about 2025 at the end. I was not right about 2025 at the end. I thought things were going to run up. I think we all thought things were going to run up. So here we are sitting on it. I'm sitting on my asset, and we're waiting for some better news to happen. Okay. So again, the fundamentals are still in play, and that's the game. We have a new Fed chair coming in. I was just watching an interview with Tom Lee on this. He says, when the new Fed chair comes in, the markets are going to test it. Right. We know that the new Fed chair is going to be supportive of quantitative easing, supportive of lowering interest rates because you got Trump in the game. Trump's going to be influencing the new Fed chair. And so they're going to be more of a dovish Fed coming into the marketplace, but the markets are still going to test it. It's something new, and they're going to be testing the new Fed and to see, is it really going to hold? Is it going to be quantitative easing? Is it going to be a dovish Fed? And we'll see as that stabilizes in 2026 of how that actually plays out. So lots of new things happening in the marketplace. We've got AI in the marketplace, and there's talks about the AI bubble. So there's uncertainty in the marketplace there. Again, Tom Lee was talking about this in an interview, how a lot of the investors that he's talking to, they're a little bit leery sitting on the sidelines because there's so much uncertainty. Are we in an AI bubble? Should we sit on our money? Should we invest it? Ultimately, the basic reports come out that show that, jobs need more skill and fewer people are trained for them. And that's the reality. There are fewer younger workers coming into the marketplace today. So if you look at AI and people think it's an AI bubble, I don't think we're in an AI bubble at all. I have another company that we're about to launch an AI software. There's more and more need for AI right now in the marketplace. AI adoption isn't optional. Yeah, are there some companies that are running up and jumping because of the euphoria and all of that? Yeah, but overall AI is not going anywhere. And there's also news that we're going to have a labor shortage that lasts into the 2030s. A huge group of people are retiring right now. They're not being replaced one for one. There's fewer younger workers coming into the marketplace. Jobs need more skill, and fewer people are trained for them right now. And some companies feel we have more work than people who can actually do it well. So AI helps less people do more work. Companies don't buy AI because it's exciting. A lot of them are buying it because they can't find the skilled people that they need right now. So AI is not going away. So that's a whole nother run that's taking place in the market right now. I don't expect AI as in the main. It's not going away. This is not a fad. This is not a thing that's like, oh my God, it's AI, and all of a sudden it's going to go away. It's like AI is here to stay. AI is part of the future, and that's the game. So that's what's happening in the broader market of that. Now, Bitcoin, it doesn't trade like stocks, so let's not forget, it doesn't care about earnings calls. It doesn't get a bailout. Bitcoin reacts to liquidity. It reacts to trust. It reacts to stress in the system. So that's why it moves violently during transitions like this. And as Bitcoin matures, these old cycle rules matter less, like the 4-year cycle that we've all been sitting here like, oh, it's a 4-year cycle, right? Let's face it, 4-year cycle's dead. The old rules are dead. And you know what? Kudos to Saylor, because Saylor's been saying this even before this happened. Saylor's been saying this for years and years. He's like, you can throw out your charts, you can throw out your graphs, you can throw out your prediction models, you can throw out all of that, because it's a completely new game with institutions moving into it. And that's what we're seeing right now. So we're just going to have to, for me personally, I'm like looking at the marketplace, and what I'm saying is, do I believe in the business model of BMNR? Do I believe in Ethereum? Right? Do I believe that do I know that Wall Street's moving onto the blockchain? Check the box. So if Wall Street's moving onto the blockchain, we know the blockchain's not going away. We know the fundamentals are strong. We know Wall Street has to move there to be competitive in the global landscape. And we know that they're moving there because they're going to make more money moving there, and they're going to save money moving there. So that's a layup. So if we know that, then we look at the fundamentals of BMNR, and what are they doing? They're buying mostly Ethereum. And so if we look at this long term, to me, that's why BMNR is a smart bet. If we look at strategy, do we think Bitcoin is going to be around 5 years, 10 years into the future? And this is the viewpoint now that I'm taking on specifically. It's just long-term viewpoints of, do you think Bitcoin is going to be around in the future? Is Bitcoin truly a scarce asset? Yes, it is. It's not like gold, where all of a sudden you say like, hey, there's limited gold supply out there, and then a mine in China springs up like it did that's worth $80 billion that we just discovered, right? It's a different asset. And so if we know that it's scarce, we know there's only 21 million, we know that it's going to be here in the future, does that bode well for companies like Strategy that own 3% of the supply and will eventually own 5% of the supply likely? It does. So you zoom out, you look at long-term fundamentals, and it's about patience at this point. And it's about going into the unknown, because we don't know what's going to happen next. Nobody knows what's going to happen in 2026. It's a new game. So for me, I'm just looking at what I believe from a fundamental standpoint. Okay. And this is what I believe. So when you look at strategy, overall, if you haven't followed MSTR, I mean, Bitcoin is their reserve asset. All right. And it's their collateral, it's their capital engine, and it's the same loop that BMNR and MSTR run together. All right. When you look at the loop, is they raise capital, MSTR, and they buy Bitcoin. BMNR raises capital and they buy Ethereum. And so it's the same thing. If you look at the what's it, $1 billion that BMNR now recently had in cash. So when you look at the $1 billion or so in cash, they've been issuing new shares along the way, and they use those shares to buy more Ethereum. It's the same playbook that Strategy runs. It's not much different, and they're both doing a very, very similar thing. And the whole idea is they want to increase ETH per share for their shareholders, and they want to increase Bitcoin per share for their shareholders. So ultimately, I mean, I'm not putting any dry powder into MSTR or BMNR, but if you look at MSTR right now at $180 something, I mean, one could argue that this is a good buy, right? So, and one could argue, like when it was at 400 and people are loading in because it's going to run higher. Now it's at 180. So there's some fundamentals here of like, okay, do I believe that this stock will eventually go up beyond 400, 500 in future? Do I believe one day it could go to 1,000? Those are the questions one would ask themselves if they were eventually going to invest into MSTR. Even BMNR has been at 65 multiple times before, or 60 multiple times before. It's run up to that. When you look at it now, when it's sitting at 34, is it a hell of a buy? Not financial advice. Absolutely, it's a hell of a buy, right? So personal viewpoint, 34. It's like, is it going to go up one day to 60 again? I believe it's going to. So these are, opportunities right now that are showing their face, and when it will yield its benefits in the future in terms of going to higher with MSTR, will it get back to 400? I believe one day. Will it get back to BMNR, get back to 65? I believe one day. So to me, these are just longer term plays at this point. So, basically MSTR's message has been, we don't trust cash to hold value. So Bitcoin is our savings account. And, that's what they did in 2020. They didn't trust cash. And I think this is a global message for just people all around the world. Like, how many people trust that cash is going to hold its value? It doesn't hold its value. In fact, if you owned, $100 100 years ago, that $100 would be worth like $1 today, because cash doesn't hold its value. Cash loses like 98% of its value over that time frame. All right. And so anything that you have more supply of it is going to lose its value. Even gold, you get 2% more gold that's mined every single year. So gold over time will actually lose its value because there's more supply. Bitcoin's different. There's only a limited supply. So Bitcoin in that sense is deflationary. And so Bitcoin's going to hold its value over the long term and get more valuable. And that's just the gist of how that rolls. Okay. So how does the system push back a little bit and the pressure that it's put on MSTR and Bitcoin? It came through leverage a little bit. It didn't come from banning Bitcoin. It came from going after MSTR. So the rules around borrowing against MSTR stock tightened dramatically. So when leverage disappears, you start to see hedge funds unwind. So basically a hedge fund, they borrow money and they make bigger bets. And banks started to say, hey, you can't borrow as much money using this stock anymore. So if you have hedge funds borrowing money and they're using leverage to, let's say, buy MSTR stock, and the restrictions come in, hey, you can't do that anymore, what happens? Well, forced selling hits. And some lenders said, pay us back more or reduce your positions in this. So when you have that come in and there's more restrictive policy coming in from banks and institutions, it causes forced selling. And this is some of what happened with MSTR, and the price starts to drop fast. Now, there can be all kinds of speculation of, was this done on purpose or what have you? And, you're entitled to your opinion on it, but it was a change in the rules, not a change in MSTR strategy. And MSTR became big. They became big, and the system tightened risk controls. Can't say it was personal. It's just institutional response, and everybody's entitled to their own conclusion on it, but it was institutional response. So at the same time, Wall Street did what it always does. Instead of owning the asset, what did Wall Street do? It created products tied to the asset. So the value of Bitcoin went up, Wall Street being late to the game. So instead of rushing to own the real thing with Bitcoin, it does what it always does. It creates paper versions of it. And by creating paper versions of Bitcoin, Wall Street makes fees. They keep control. They don't fight limited supply with Bitcoin. And if you look at examples of how they do that, you got the futures market. It's a bet on Bitcoin without owning it. You got big banks like JP Morgan do this, Goldman Sachs, Morgan Stanley. These are Bitcoin linked notes that they have. And basically a client, they go to a client and the client owns a contract with JP Morgan, but they don't own Bitcoin. And for some clients, it's apparency that they own Bitcoin. They don't own Bitcoin. JP Morgan usually doesn't buy the Bitcoin. And these institutions usually don't buy the Bitcoin. They do options, they do derivatives, they do futures, right? So the client feels like they're owning it, but they really don't. And no Bitcoin gets removed from the marketplace there because they're not scooping up the supply of Bitcoin. And the promise on these things, on these notes and things on this is like, we promise to pay you based on Bitcoin, but on Bitcoin's price, but we don't actually give you Bitcoin. And in some cases, they don't actually own Bitcoin. So this is nothing new. They've done it with gold. They've done it with oil. It's paper exposure. It's synthetic exposure. It looks like ownership, but it doesn't touch the supply. And we've seen this in the past. So Bitcoin will eventually break the old rails. So you can only do this for so long. But Bitcoin eventually will break the old rails of finance. Ethereum's breaking the old rails of finance. It's why organizations like Swift, that like there's like $11 trillion that moves through Swift. It transfers from bank A to bank B. And Swift is building on the blockchain. They're testing right now. So these institutions are not stupid. They're adopting it. And when they make moves, they don't make moves for the short term. They make them for the long term, because institutions move slow because they're big things they got to move. So you got to move this big thing, this big mass. You got to move it over here. And as you got to move this whole company over here, it takes time, it takes resources, it takes money. So they know what they're doing and they're moving. And Bitcoin, ultimately, it can't be quietly it can't be inflated, right? I mean, ultimately at the end of the day, there's a limited supply, so it's not going to be quietly inflated. It can't be multiplied endlessly, and it's not going to be shut down because it's global. So, we got the blockchain. It's running 24/7. That's why people want to move on. The sentiment now is global. We know it's a global play now, and institutions are going global. And this eventually breaks the old financial rails, and we're going through a transition right now into the new rails are set up. And there's kind of this full transition, and we see how the old guard plays with kind of the new financial world, and see how it all kind of mixes together into one new recipe. And we're going to see what that recipe looks like. It's playing out right now. Okay. So that's what's going on in the market. I just wanted to give you updates of my perspective on it, and ultimately in summary, here's the quick summary. One, the Fed cut interest rates again. It was more of a dovish Fed conference. As a result of that, we knew that there was going to be a front running where the price was going to zoom up. BMNR zoomed up, and I knew there was going to be a sell-off, which is why I sold off BMNR when it was at 41.5. Okay. And I bought back in. So these things are, the market was expecting it. There's no major change in BMNR's strategy. They're going to continue to buy Ethereum. They're going to get to 5% of the supply. And it's a solid company because it's based on the new financial rails of Ethereum. So that's one. Number two, MSTR. The game hasn't changed in terms of their overall strategy. They're going to continue to acquire Bitcoin. They've showed this in the face of suppression or being knocked around. They came back and they bought $1 billion of Bitcoin almost 1 week and another $1 billion of Bitcoin. They will continue till they get to over 5% of the supply. I'm sure they'll eventually hit that, and they'll continue to do what they're doing, and they'll run their game plan, and nobody's going to stop them from running their game plan. All this noise of MSTR is going to eventually get liquidated, or they're going to sell their Bitcoin. It's noise. The company hardly has any debt. It's got like $9 billion in debt. It's got 80-something billion dollars of Bitcoin. The company's not going to get liquidated. Is there always a chance in the world that the entire Bitcoin shuts down and there's this black swan event and MSTR goes out of business? Sure, you always got to prepare for those things, but the likelihood is very, very, very slim. And we've seen huge drawdowns with MSTR before. It's not the first. It's just the first in the face of different type of expectation. The expectation was MSTR is going to the moon, Bitcoin's going to the moon, and in the face of great expectations, when you have the worst result possible in October and November, all of a sudden it's like, oh my God, this is a disaster. And quite frankly, it wasn't fun, but we've seen 50% drawdowns on MSTR before. All right. So let's see what happens for the future. Long term, MSTR still a winner, incredible playbook. Is going to do amazing things for people all across the globe, particularly with their other preferred stocks as well, where people can get exposure and get these 10% returns with Strike and Strife and Stride. Additionally, BMNR summary. BMNR has been in this place before. We've seen them. We saw it drop in August to September to 39. We've never seen it go down to 25 recently in the last 5 months, but it's dropped drastically before. Nobody expected to drop this low. Eventually, it will bounce back. The fundamentals of the company are too strong. The voice of Tom Lee is too big in Wall Street. He's also got Wall Street on his side, which is a little bit of a different scenario because he's got Wall Street. He's in their ear. They're in his ear. So to me, it is a phenomenal company. And then, if you saw the sell-off on Friday, that's the game. Markets run up and then they sell off. People take profits. All right. So we'll see what happens in the upcoming weeks and see what that means. In 2026, we got a new Fed chair coming in. So we'll see what that means. That'll be more of a dovish Fed. And then we'll see how Bitcoin and Ethereum run into the new year. So I hope it works out for everybody. If you want to get my book, go snag it. One of the ways you can support the channel is you can subscribe, like it, but you can also get my book. It's free. I want to give it to you. I want you to have it. I spent a lot of time writing it. If you want to understand MSTR, like totally 100%, it's all in the book and it's written so simply. If you want to understand BMNR, it's all in the book and it's written super simply. If you want to understand traditional finance, mind you, I spent years in traditional finance. I was the number 5 partner out of one of the top financial firms in the world, all right, in my 20s. And I saw how these financial products work. So I've got a totally inside view of traditional finance, which is why I'm so bullish on the new world of finance, because I've seen it from the inside. It's all in the book. You want to know how the Fed works? It's all in the book. If you want to know once and for all, I'm not talking about interest rate cuts, man. I'm talking about, do you really want to know how the Fed works? Like, we sit around this world and we're walking around in a confusion. It's all in the book. Like, I break it down because people really don't know how the Fed works. People really don't know how the money system works. The world should know this. They should know this. It's broken down so plain English in the book. How does the Fed actually work? I'm not talking about cutting interest rates and running the market. I'm talking about, how does the money supply work? All in the book. And then if you want to take a look and give this to a friend, like somebody who knows nothing about Bitcoin or nothing about Ethereum and has no understanding, I give the simple definitions of it. But my philosophy, listen, I've been in sales for a long time, okay? Since I was 21. And my philosophy is, if you want to introduce people to one of the greatest assets in the world, Bitcoin, you don't introduce them to Bitcoin first. You introduce the problem to them. And so in Money Game, I go over the problem. That's why you see the title of this book, The 10% Lie. Because the lie that your parents have been told and your grandparents have been told is, they've been told, like, hey, you get 10 to 12% in the market and you're good over the long term. And the truth is, you're not. You're not. So the way you get somebody into Bitcoin and the way you spread the new financial world is not by talking about Bitcoin. The way you get them into it is you introduce the problem first. And if you introduce the problem and then they start to realize, oh my God, there is a problem with traditional finance, then they will start to reach for solutions. So if you want to help the world, that's my game. I want to help people. So I wrote the book to help people. It's how, I've been able to sit with my stepfather, who's 83, and he got into Bitcoin when it was $10,000 or $15,000 because my brother and I went and introduced it to him. Right? I got so many friends. I got so many friends into Bitcoin at, like, when it was at $20,000. If they had listened to me then, they would have gotten in when it was $7,000, because I was talking about it was $7,000. I was talking about it to my friends when it was at $3,000. That's when I was buying it. I was mining Bitcoin in 2018. Picked up my first couple Bitcoin mining it when it was around $2,000 or $3,000. So, the way you get people into it is you introduce the problem. It's all in the book, and you should get it. And for those of you who want to learn trading, listen, I got people in my community that knew nothing about trading before. They don't want to be traders. They're busy people. I'm a busy guy. I don't sit here and go like, I'm this day trader, but I do trade every day. Okay? Because I wanted to learn the game of how not to be manipulated by the market all the time and sit there when the market crashes. I sit there and go, oh, I'm just going to wait a year and a half to make some money. No, when the market drops down, I want to pick up more shares, and I do it through trading. So if you want to learn that too, I have a free video I give away. And I'm telling you, like, these are, like, if you look at my friends here, and if you look at some of my friends, I'm trying to grab the screen for you, who, like, knew nothing about trading, like nothing whatsoever. And they got in the game. Well, anyway, I'm trying to share you the screen. I can't find the damn screen. But they got in the game, my friends. Oh, here it is. Right? And my friends who got in the game, like, look at this. Like, 2%. Never traded a day in his life before. On Thursday, he made 2%. This guy had not traded either, 1.84%. This guy is saying another 2%. Huge win today with one of my employees, made 10.2% the other day and closed out his trade, all on BMNR. We're trading BMNR. Why? Because it's volatile. This whole group, they, like, 80% of them don't even believe in BMNR. I'm just teaching them how to trade it. I'm like, dude, like, I don't care if you believe in it or not. I'm going to teach you how to trade it and make some damn money, right? I'm like the mini of the group. I said I picked up another 0.3% on the trade. The group's picking up 2 or whatever. Okay, there I am. I picked up 1.8%. Another 2.75% picked up. So you got people. I saw this guy's paper trading, because we teach you how to paper trade. He got 1.5% on his first paper trade ever. So one should learn the game of money, and they should just know it. This is not a thing that's money should not be a thing that is only subject to the control of a few people or a few percentile of the world. I think the world needs to learn about money, which is why I created the Money Game community, which is why I'm giving you my book away for free, which is why I'm giving you my Money Game book away, my Money Game videos away for free. I'm on a mission to make money simple for 99.5% of the population who doesn't even want to confront it, doesn't even want to look at it. Okay. So if you want to get my book, grab it down below. Comes with a free video of trading. Pass this on, subscribe, like the channel. Also, I'd love your help on something, right? Some of you have been following me for a while. I've been giving content to you for over a year. And we accidentally, somebody on my team accidentally ran ads to the channel, and we like, I used to do these lives when we get like 300 people showing up right away, and they messed up the algorithm. So a bunch of my people were following me for a while, like it knocked them out of the game. So if you spread it to a friend, share it with somebody, let them know so we can get the algorithm back again, because we screwed it up by running some ads on our YouTube account that just was like, oh, your traditional followers are not following you anymore because we knocked out the algorithm and screwed up the algorithm, and now we got to rebuild it a little bit. So introduce it to some other people. Let's get some people back on the channel so we can help more people. Okay, we're all in this together. Let's go help some people and have some fun. You guys are amazing. Have a great rest of your day. I'll see you very, very soon, and thanks for tuning in. And and you guys are the bold and the brave who are, charting the path for your family and all the people who don't even know about this stuff yet. Okay. Stay well. Have a great rest of the day. I'll see you very, very soon.